Hello guys, in this video tutorial we are going to look at how we implement CSS and the syntax of CSS. Okay, how do we implement CSS? CSS can be implemented in three ways. One way is by the one we call inline. We have inline CSS. We have internal CSS. Then we have external CSS. Okay, so I'm going to teach these three types of CSS implementation with example so that you will see they are different and equally see their benefit. Okay, we will first of all start with inline CSS. Okay, inline CSS are written on the tag as an attribute using style attributes. Okay, so let me just start. Let me open my Visual Studio Code. Okay, let me go to my previous codes. Let me pick list. Okay, these are the code we wrote when we are studying list. Okay, I want to write inline CSS on this ordered list here. I want to write inline CSS. In this inline CSS, I want to color this to red and then change the font family to Algerian. Okay, but before I do that, let me just test this so that I will see the view before I start writing the CSS. Okay, so review in the File Explorer and double click on this. Okay, this is the result we have previously. So I want to change this to blue and change the font size to Algerian, and I want to change the font size to the font family to Algerian, and the font size maybe to 45. Okay, so let's start. Okay, inline CSS, we start by from at the opening tag you write an attribute known as style. Okay, like this. Then inside the quote now you start making your declaration. Don't worry about the code I'm going to write here, but what I really want you to understand is that inline CSS are being written in that tag. Okay, don't worry about the declarations I'm going to make. I will explain later in as time goes on. Okay, so let me color this red. Say color is red. Okay, font family, I want to change the font. Say font family is Algerian. Then I say that the font size is 45 px. Okay, what this here I made three declarations. I will soon explain what declaration is all about. This is the first declaration. This declaration is changing the color of this ordered list to red. Then the second declaration is changing the font to Algerian, and the third declaration is changing the font size to 45. Okay, let me run this code now. You see what we have. The color is right. The font family or the font is different from the ones we have here. This is Algerian font, and the size is now 45. Okay, this is how we do it when you want to write CSS inline CSS. We use this style attribute equals to, then inside the quote we start making declaration. Then for internal, we come to the head tag. You see the head tag before the closing tag. You can write here anywhere, but make sure you write it between the head tag. Okay, we start by writing this tag here known as style. Then we start making our declaration here by using what we call selector. Okay, let me say dot try. Okay, I start writing something like this. Don't worry about this code, I will explain. Just understand that internal are being written at the head. Okay, and also understand how we implement it. Don't worry about this CSS code. as time goes on, I'm going to explain it very simple in a way you understand. Okay, here I want to do color. Let me say color is blue. Okay, it says font family. Let me say here font family is Vadana. Okay, this is family. Okay, then I says font size. Font size is let me say 70 ps. Okay, now in internal CSS we make use of what we call selector, because this we have written here, we have not really assigned it to any tag. After writing the CSS, we now assign it to a tag that to make use of it. Okay, I will explain what selector is and the types of selector, and we equally explain what declarations are and how you make declaration in CSS. But understand that internal CSS, we make use of this tag. Style tag is a double tag, then inside you start writing your declaration using selector. Okay, now I have said that my selector here is a class selector, which is try. Let me implement it here. I have to do something like this. Class is equals to try. Okay, here I am now moving all this code and giving it a command to work on this tag, because this code is try and this is try. I am saying this place now, color is blue, let the font family be Vadana, let the font size be 70, right? Okay, let me test this code. Okay, you see it here, it's working. So if I do any change here, it will reflect here. Let me change this color to yellow. This is yellow. Go back to my code. You see that the color is now yellow, right? Okay, let me change it to pink. Okay, and change the font family to Tahoma. Let me run the code again. You see the font family has changed and the color is pink. Okay, this is how we implement inline CSS, and this is how we implement this is inline CSS, how we implement inline CSS, and this is how we implement internal CSS. Okay, I am going to talk about external CSS. Then after that, we will now start telling you their differences and their benefits, and I will quickly tell you about selector and declarations. Just relax. But first, understand how we implement this CSS. So CSS, you can follow this pattern. You can follow this pattern. You can equally follow the pattern of external. So in external, you are writing a CSS. You are creating a CSS file. You link it here. Then you now assign it to any of the tag here. So first, let's start by creating a CSS file. This is how we do the external CSS. First of all, I want this code to be organized, so I'll create a folder. I'll call this folder CSS. Okay, now inside this folder now, I'll create now a file. I will call this file style or any name of your choice. Okay, let me call it good. Okay, good.css. I have created a CSS file. Now inside this CSS now, I will start making my declaration. My code will be similar to the one of internal. I'm going to be writing something similar to this inside this CSS file that I have just created. Okay, so here let me start with a class again. Let me say class big. Okay, let me say let the color be good. Let the color be good. Okay, let the font size, okay, let me just be using the declaration we are talking about. Let the font size be 12. Okay, What else? Let the background color be since we have color yellow, let's say let the background color be blue. Okay, now I have this class big. Now watch, after creating this CSS file, first thing is to link it here. After linking it here, now I will now start declaring it. Okay, let me link it. To link it, we use this tag known as link. This link tag is a single tag. I do tab. You see what I have? I have the reference telling him this is a style sheet, which means it's a CSS. Now I start linking it here by writing CSS / good.css. Okay, CSS is this folder. Then inside the folder we have good.css. Now after linking this, now it simply means that this code has been inserted inside our work here. Now we'll start assigning it. Now remember, what I use here is big. So for me to assign it to maybe to this definition list, I have to call the class here. Let me say class is equals to big. You see that this definition list will change. Okay, that's the definition list here. Let me refresh. See that it has changed. It has now become small, and it has a background color of blue and the color of gold color. Okay, let me expand it more. Let me come back to my code, go to CSS file. Let me say, let the font size be 72. Okay, if I refresh again, you see that it will reflect on this. Okay, do you see it? So here actually we created a CSS file, link it here, and then assign it here. But in internal, we write a CSS file here, okay, then assign it. But in inline, we write it in the tag. Okay, let me just explain the benefits and the differences between these three types of CSS. One is that the inline CSS can only be used in this tag header one. If I want to do another one, I have to start writing it in that tag again. But this inline, since I have declared it here, implement it here, I can as well as implement it somewhere else. Maybe for this unordered list, I can equally implement it by writing exactly what I wrote here, which is class is equals to try. Okay, you see, I have written the code once and I have implemented it in 2 places. I can implement it in so many places. What I need to do is just to write the code once, but in inline I have to start writing it on each tag. So you can see that inline is better than internal, is a little bit better than inline, right? Okay, let me test this code now. You see that both this guy and this guy have been affected because 2 of them I called it from the inline CSS. Okay, but for me, for this I called it from the internal CSS. Sorry, this is internal CSS. But for inline, I have to be repeating the code on each of the tag. Okay, for internal, I write once and link. But one limitation about this internal is that this internal can only have effect only on this page because the code is in this page, right? What about external? External, now I have written the code outside. We have a CSS file. So this code now, I can link it in any of this page. It can go to so many pages. What I have to do is to link this inside of this page and start calling the classes or the selector that I have created. Don't worry, I will explain about this as time passes. But what I want us to understand is that inline, I can use it in a particular tag. Inline can be used in a particular tag, but internal can be used in all the tags within that page, in all the tags within this list HTML. But external, I can use it in list, I can use it in image, iframe, form, comment, color, and all that. Okay, so that's why it's a good practice W3C recommend that we make use of external so that we write our code once and use it throughout our website. Okay, but for internal, you can use it throughout only this page that you created. Only this list page is where this can work, whereby inline can work only on this tag. Okay, now look at the differences. Let me just use example, but before that, let me show you this external link, the benefit. Now you see that this external link, I have linked it on list. Okay, look at where I linked it. Okay, then I use it here. I use it here. Okay, I can equally link it in form. Okay, let me just open this form code so that you will see what is inside it. In this form, look at what we have. So I will link it in this form and I will use it here. Right? Okay, for me to link it in this form is very simple. I will come to the form file, go to the header tag just the way we do on that list.html. Inside here now, I will link using my link tag. Don't forget, it's a link tag. You reference style sheet. Then here, I will now link. You remember this file is inside CSS folder and the name of this file is good.css. Okay, once I link, I can start be using it here. You see that this code now, I have used it here and I'm still using it here. That is why external is very, very good. So in this place now, this is where I want to use that code. First of all, I have to open my CSS file. Notice that what I'm using is .big, which is class. I go to form now, come here, write the attribute class is equals to big, right? So since I have this now, I have linked this CSS and I'm using it here. Coming back to the list, I link this CSS here and I'm using it here, right? Okay, let me test this code now. If I refresh, you will see that CSS is working here. If I go to list and refresh, you see that CSS is working here as well. Okay, this is how to use or how to implement external CSS. Okay, now we want to talk about the syntax of CSS. How do we write CSS? Okay, in CSS, every CSS must have what we call declaration. In declaration, you first of all write what you want to do, then you write the value. Okay, let me just use a simpler method to explain this. Okay, to make it more simpler, this is known as property, right? This is known as value. Okay, this is known as property. You write your column, then you write your value, right? Then you end with semicolon. Any declaration in CSS always ends in semicolon. Okay, this is declaration now. The property of color and the value for that color is red. Okay, I can say property of font size and the value now should be number because I'm talking about size 23 ps. Okay, this is property, this is value, this is property. Okay, this is value. So property ends with this colon, then comes in with value, and we end with semicolon. It doesn't matter whether you write it in a straight line or whether you break the line. Then combination of property and value is known as declaration. We call this declaration. Property, value, all of them are declaration. So here I can say that I have two declaration. So look at this now. You see that in inline I make use of declaration. Okay, I have declaration of this color, declaration of font family, declaration of font size. Then in internal I have equally declaration, right? In external I equally have declaration. So you can see that all CSS must use declaration. We only use declaration to define exactly what we want to perform, to define the styling or the how do I say it, or the view of our code or our software. Okay, but here you notice that in internal there is something different in internal and then inline. Internal makes use of this what we call curly bracket. Okay, curly bracket here, and then what we call selector, right? Then external equally makes use of the curly bracket and selector. Why are they different? Okay, here is because in inline we have already gotten the tag we want to style, so no need of creating a selector again or a kind of identifier. So we just write our declaration and it will start working here. But in internal we are not writing on any tag, you understand? So we have to use a selector so that when we call the selector, this code now will be working here. We now see why we need selector. So we have to write with a selector so that we only need to call this selector, whereby this selector is the one holding all our declarations. So once we call this selector, all the declaration will automatically will be written here through CSS, and all the declaration we write here will be implemented in this tag. Okay, so in external as well, we are not writing in any tag, so we equally need a selector. So first of all is that we load this in that file. We load the CSS in that HTML file. Now we start calling the selector. Okay, I think I have explained how we implement CSS in 3 ways, and equally explain the syntax and talks about a little bit about selector. Thank you guys.